Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be in such an amazing company. I wish under better circumstances. A few years back when I came here to talk about my book, I've delivered a bucket load of doom, and it got worse since. It's always a bit of a blessing and a curse to go the last on the panel, because you keep thinking about your paper. So I'm just going to start my time. You keep thinking about your paper, but also you can kind of write on what other people have said. And I'm glad that we're talking about the economic aspects and class aspects and governance aspects of what is going on in Ukraine, because culture and education and preservation of nature and all of those wonderful things inevitably are in a permanent relationship with the economic ability to do all of those things. And so, as boring as it may be, it's very important to look at the material base from which we're going from. And in that sense, this is why I'm not an interpreter and a political economist. This was not the plan, right? But then Ukraine got in the way of all sorts of plans and oligarchs and the rest of it. So what I want to talk about today is this kind of post-war reconstruction, and of course reconstruction is happening right now. So all of these kind of plans, the timelines and discussions, and I've noticed that they're quite important, and I've noticed that yesterday and today through our conversations as well, that sometimes when we start to frame our questions and our conceptualization about different things, we fall into the trap sometimes of seeing things as a continuum. But the thing is, like, there are certain things that are ongoing there, but there are also certain ruptures and turns in how we see things. So it's important to look at them. One of the things that are ongoing in Ukraine is that it's economic problems, it's problems with corruption and oligarchs and all of that kind of thing. But like one point of caution I want to say, I live in Britain for my sins, when I hear about corruption in Ukraine and I read news in Britain, I understand that Ukraine's corruption is actually kind of children's games. I'll give you an example. Our test and trace program cost £37 billion, and it never was delivered, and the woman got promoted as a result. So if you want to talk about corruption, sometimes it's worth looking around yourself and not looking into these countries and not thinking about their leaders as puppets as well, because if somebody can tell me whose puppet was Kuchma, I would be very interested to hear. But coming back to Ukraine, so when the most recent invasion started in 2014, Ukraine was already the poorest and most indebted country in Europe, and I'm talking geographic Europe here. And of course, the budgetary expenditure on arms and humanitarian needs and medical needs and everything associated has exploded exponentially. The projection of the World Bank is 45% GDP contraction year on year. It's going to be more. A lot of numbers, I'm not even going to throw them around because a lot of them are inaccurate. They cannot be accurate at this point, and they are growing as we are speaking right now. Every time something explodes, numbers are going up. So what I'm trying to do in my work, and I've been working in political economy in Ukraine for a while, and on different aspects of it, because I'm a dialectical scholar, and I understand that you need to, not the kind of Stalinist dialectical, that's not dialectics, but the thing is, like, to understand why certain problems happen, you need to look at the society as a whole, and look at the economic system, and look at where Ukraine fits in the global economic system as well. So what I'm trying to develop here is kind of a criticism of what's happened in Ukraine and where the country was when the war started, and also see kind of whether the plan that's been developed to fix it is actually fitting the purpose. And my idea is that it really isn't. Because when with any analysis, we need to always start with sort of like analytical frameworks of how we see things. And very often we hear about this kind of, corrupt Ukrainians, they just need a little bit more policy support and a bit more education and all of that kind of stuff. But the thing is that what we're looking at is that this kind of narrative of transition to market, we need to we need to throw that hat away and replace it with the hat of the development. What we have seen through this transition to market and why that happened, we can discuss in Q&A. But what we have seen is that there's been a de-development of what are called transition economies. Ukraine is not unique in this sense. And that came together with the lapidation of public services. It wasn't a tabula rasa. It's not that things didn't exist. We already heard about water utilities and all sorts of other utilities and networks and very complex systems of energy production and space production, aviation, all of those kind of things. So Ukraine was a highly developed country when it became independent, and it's not anymore. And that is because of market reforms, because there was a sell-off of what was already there, and the sell-off is ongoing. We have seen this kind of de-development that came with a lot of socioeconomic costs, such as feminization of poverty, unemployment, sporadic turns to subsistence agriculture, brain drain, look at what's sitting here, labor migration, variegated remittances, reliance, extremes of riches for selected few and poverty for the many. And that is even before the war. And war, of course, made it a million times worse. In 21 alone, over 600,000 people left the country because they couldn't make their ends meet. During pandemic, literally risking their lives, and a lot died in the process. So, yeah, there were a lot of problems before. And doing more of the same is not going to save the situation. So I'm going to go to more of the same. Oh, I don't have the clicker. Can I have the first slides? So, thanks. Oh, where does it go? Oh. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this July in Lugano, there was presented an economic plan. And for those who are excited about Zelensky, I want to have a quick reminder that before the war started, Zelensky and his party's ratings were going through the floor. So it was, I think war helped him more than he's helping it, but that's a separate conversation. So what we see in this plan, there are amazing kind of ideas as to what needs to happen in Ukraine. We see beautiful things like sustainability and partnership and reforms and recovery of infrastructure, and those are all great things. But I'm a political economist, and I'm interested in not only aims, but also means. So this is the head of State Property Fund of the Ukraine, sorry, first deputy, and says that state property should not be just property, but national wealth. It's a great statement. And the fact that State Property Fund is being run as an auction house of whatever is left by the Soviets behind is also quite amusing, if you ask me. One of the things I saw on the website yesterday was a sale of the bubbly wines plant in Odessa. Why can that not be owned by the state and turned into a profitable enterprise is also anyone's guess. Yeah, there is this whole kind of conversation also that we need to have about why we think of the state as something that is bad in the economy. The state is an institution that represents people and manages all sorts of services and goods for them. Why do we treat it as a dirty word? It's one thing when state administration interferes with functioning of businesses and gets into your private life. Now, that's not good. But if there is state property that generates revenue and invests it in schools and in education, in roads, in regeneration of environment, what is wrong with that? We talk about, there are all of these talks about corruption and over bureaucratization. That's a problem of management, not a problem of ownership. And that is something that is very important to remember. Ukrainian, yeah, I'll take 2 more minutes. Right, so this is from the State Property Fund website for you. It's really strange, like if you look at the thinking, because this is all these servants of the people, so to speak, who are basically selling off whatever is there, and they're very excited. They're very excited that some enterprises won't be privatized. Yeah, so everything else will be privatized. So how we're going to finance this recovery? We're going to sell everything that we've got, and then we're going to get loans and we're going to get investors in. But enterprises that are part of security won't be privatized. Natural monopolies won't be privatized, even though enterprises such as the railway, for example, is under constant pressure of privatization. Then enterprises that are important to society and those providing services and goods that cannot be performed by private business. Very weird wording for an economist, but you get the picture. And they're very excited that in 21, it was a record year for sell-off of state property. Very strange ideas of what constitutes success. Do I have anything else in there? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to leave it at this. So these different Lugano principles and the recovery plan, they are sort of very great and interesting, but they do not quite fit the purpose. Why don't they fit the purpose? Because all war and post-war recoveries and successes, and a lot of this is modeled on, we hear about Marshall Plan a lot, right? All the scholarship on Marshall Plans shows that what made it success is active role of the state as an investor. The global consensus of economic thinking, we've seen that through the pandemic and post-pandemic recovery, in the Green New Deal and European Green Deal, we see that states, even EU has relaxed its fiscal compact and allowed states to borrow directly to invest. The thing is, like, no investor, private investor in their right mind will go and start building anything in a country that's being bombed on a daily basis. You do not need to be an investor to understand that. So the premises on which this plan is built absolutely do not work. And they all replicate what I show to my economics students, and this is a graph from ecological economics. Externalities have to be factored in. If we are to stabilize the business cycles in Ukraine, we need to make sure that there is an inflation of revenue that goes between households and it goes and firms. You are not going to do that by borrowing your way out of it, and Ukraine is already heavily indebted. I'm going to shut up here. And you are not going to do it by selling off whatever you have left. Thank you very much.